Welcome, everyone. Thank you for being here, for joining this conversation for the Oakland Climate Festival. My name is Brian Berneman from Conscious Action, and for this evening, we are here talking about this, about what can you do for climate action. This is a huge topic. There is so much that we can discuss during this hour, and there's a lot that depends on where we are, both geographically, mentally, socially. Like, there's so many different aspects to acknowledge. So one of the first things that I wanted to make sure is that before we get started, and this is something that I usually like to do, is just to close our eyes for a moment and to take a deep breath. Allowing ourselves to arrive. Acknowledging that we are coming into this space with whatever came before. We bring in all of our feelings, all of our thoughts, all of our worries. If we have any stress, we're bringing that into the space. So just acknowledging what we're bringing into the space. And as we land here in this moment, I invite you, if it's possible, to let that go. Giving yourself the opportunity to be fully here, present. Acknowledging the feelings in the body now, so noticing the feelings and sensations without judging them. Noticing how your breath flows in and out. And allowing yourself during this session to stay open, to stay curious. Not everything that I'm going to share is going to resonate with you. Some things might. Some things you already know. Some things might be a different way of seeing things. Just remaining open. And whenever you're ready, I invite you to open your eyes again if they were closed. Once again, thank you for joining this conversation. And I mean conversation because, yes, mostly I am going to be sharing, yet I find this to be a conversation where I as well learn. I got into this space through years of changing and growing and understanding. And one of the things for me, looking back to that little kid that grew up in Argentina, how far I've come and how much I've widened my perspective. I can say now that most of the things that I'm going to be sharing are my living experience, more than just ideas or theories. I want to share more. What can we do? One of the really important things to know is if you're alive, you're going to leave a footprint in the world. How big or how small that footprint is, or how big or how small your impact is in the world, is up to you. And this, for me, brings me a sense of responsibility. As well, it brings me a sense of being able to do something. A lot of times, we might feel like we're just one person. What we do might not be significant. It is. So I invite you to widen your perspective to see that you matter and what you do matters. One of the main aspects of where we are right now and what's the root cause for me is disconnection. We have been disconnected from ourselves. We have been disconnected from our experience, our feelings. We have been living mostly in our heads. We have been disconnected in terms of how we see ourselves separate from others in relationship to others. We have been disconnected from our Mother Earth. And this disconnection has been one of the main reasons for where we are now. Where we are now has two different main symptoms. One is internal and the other one is external. The external one, I think that we all know it. The climate change, the climate crisis, what's happening in the world. The other one, internal, depression, anxiety, suicides, disease, illnesses. Both come from the same disconnection. So connection is key. As we did at the beginning as well, acknowledging what we're bringing into the space, I want to acknowledge as well, and I think that it's really necessary to acknowledge what came before. The people that came before us, everything that has been done, whether we think of it as positive or negative, acknowledging what has happened, acknowledging all of the people, all of the work that has been done. Here in Auckland, acknowledging the people from the land, acknowledging their views, acknowledging their perspectives, acknowledging their perseverance, and acknowledging their role as well in this space. We have been conditioned to believe that we are just individuals. We have individualized everything, and the systems that are in place have made that a reality. They are enabling this disconnection and this sense of being separate. Yet when we allow ourselves to reconnect, we don't see that anymore. For me, reconnecting with myself reconnecting with my body, my feelings, understanding how my mind and my body work, my path, my journey of what we would call personal development or spiritual development is what led me to live in a way that is not what I used to do. By being more aware, I got to the place of understanding the impact of my actions and my life. So, one of the first things that I wanted to bring into the space, and feel free to write it in the chat box, is why do you care? Why do you care? Do you care about being able to go to the beach without it being polluted? Do you care about the next generation? Do you care about the amount of plastics that are out there? Do you care about the animals? Do you care about the climate crisis? Do you care about social justice? Do you care about your own health? What is the reason why you care? Because once we figure out why do we care, it's easier to stay with that, to keep that, and to allow that to inform our behavior, our actions. I know, as I was sharing before, for me, a lot of it started with me. I wanted to understand myself more. For me, a lot started with my own health and well-being, and then that awareness allowed me to become more connected with the environment, with what is happening around me. Growing up in Argentina, I lived nearby a lot of slums. I grew up seeing what was happening and how our systems were making some people live in those situations with full amounts of rubbish everywhere. So it's important as well as we move through these spaces. And for me, traveling opened my eyes a lot as well. How different people live, how different people are impacted. And for me, it's really important the legacy that we choose to leave behind. So thank you. Yes, I see there the next generations. Really important. What do we want to leave for the next generations? What do we want for ourselves as well? Like, we still have, hopefully, unless we don't for whatever reason, we still have years of living here. And we already see the impacts of the climate crisis. So it's not only about that future or the future generations, it's also about the ones that are already here, including us. And yes, it's really important to see what will be the impact. So allowing yourself to know why do you care is really important. And it might be a combination of all of them. Because I believe that every single human being actually is a caring, loving human being, which has been educated and conditioned in different ways, which means that our behaviors a lot of times are more selfish, are not about the collective or the impacts of it. We're just thinking of ourselves a lot of times. So just acknowledging that. As we understand why we care, we need to understand as well our values. Because we've been conditioned to live in certain ways. So when we understand our values, we can align our actions and how we make choices and how we make decisions to our values. The more that we keep this in mind, the easier it is. If you haven't done this, when I run workshops, I take time for all of us to write down our values. Really important to understand, what do you stand for? It's much easier to act when I know what's behind it. As an example, here in New Zealand, in Auckland, when I have to go and buy some bananas, and I love bananas, I eat bananas every single day, I had to make a decision to buy one brand of bananas that is organic and fair trade, but brings a little plastic wrapping, or I had to choose the one that comes without that little piece of plastic, but it's not organic and it's not fair trade. Now, these are three things that I care about: the plastic that I consume, so trying to live with no plastic or zero waste, and I will get into it in a little bit in a moment. I care about organic food, and I care about the ethical side of it as well. So I need to make decisions. Then I need to put these values against each other, because sometimes, like in this situation, I cannot check all of the boxes. I could do what I do with other products, that is, I just don't buy them. There are certain things that I cannot find it in certain ways, and then I don't buy it. I can go without it. This again comes back to where we are, what are we ready to do, and how do we want to live? How are we aligned? And one of the really important things with this is understanding we live in this society, fast-paced, modern society, and we can get a lot of times caught up with our life circumstances. And we need to understand that there are certain things that are the way that they are because they're more convenient. Not everyone has the opportunity to make some of the choices that I particularly make. I can take the time to go to a refillery. There's one nearby me. I can take my containers, my glass jars, and I can refill them. Not everyone has a refillery next to them. Not everyone knows about it. There's different things that are there that, depending on our life circumstances, we need to do. So one of the really important things for me in the space of climate action is to introduce kindness to ourselves and to others. To be compassionate. Because as I said before, we all will leave a footprint. We can't be perfect. So being kind just with that is really important. When we can do what we believe that is right, wonderful. And the times that we can't, being kind with ourselves, knowing that we can't. Perhaps at another point in our life, we will be able to. So, really important. The way that we approach it, our mindset, our heart in it, really important. For the ones that haven't heard of this before, I'm going to go a little bit fast through this, the waste hierarchy. In its principle, this is mostly what is called the R's: the refuse, reduce, reuse, recycle. The most important thing is to refuse. What you don't need, refusing it. What you do need, trying to reduce. So ask yourself, do I really need this? Sometimes the answer is yes. Reusing, allowing yourself to use all of the things that you already have. If you, for example, have some containers or some glass jars from peanut butter or jelly or whatever it is that you have already in your home, you don't need to go and buy the new shiny eco products. Use what you have. Sometimes, yes, it helps to go and to buy something reusable, knowing that it will last, knowing that it's a good purchase. Again, keeping our values in mind when we do that. From the things that we have that are not reusable, recycling when possible. Now, recycling is a big thing. I actually don't like recycling. I prefer to avoid it in the sense of not buying anything that would be recyclable. So if it's not reusable or not compostable, I choose not to buy it. I'm not perfect. I have done a lot of things, or I have purchased a lot of things before being aware of this. So I'm okay with everything that I have done in the past. Yet, moving forward, I choose that. Most of the things, composting. This is one of the main things that we can do. So, allowing this to be part of our lives. Composting as much as we can. If you have a compost in your garden, if you have space, or in your balcony, please do that. If you don't have that, use apps like Share Waste, that they have a map of everyone in your area that is taking on people's organics, so allow that to happen. And if everything else fails, landfill. This is your last resort. Now, this is my personal rubbish since July 2018. I keep my rubbish here because I want to keep myself accountable. I want to see my impact. This a lot of times, of course, it helps with sharing so that people can see what's possible. Someone living in the city is able to do this. So it is possible to reduce. But we need to keep a lot of things in mind. For me, being able to do this is because I do a lot of things beforehand. As I mentioned before, being curious, learning, watching talks like this, going to other events that are aligned, educating ourselves, talking with people, sharing, asking questions, taking responsibility. One of the key aspects as well to be able to have just this much of an impact is by living slowly. I am able to not adhere to how most people are living, rushing from place to place. I create boundaries. I choose how I want to live. Of course, now with what's happening in the world, certain things have changed, which means that most of us are living even slower. Most of us are being able to stay home, and depending on our home situation, it might be more challenging or not as challenging. Yet it enables us to be able to see things differently. But when we can actually go to work or go to engage with the community, to do activities, Can we walk? Can we cycle there? If not, can we use public transport, carpool with other people? Finding the ways to make that happen. When we allow more time as well, we can make our own food, which means that a lot of the impact that we have that comes from what we consume in terms of food, we can reduce our footprint a lot. We can spend time planning ahead. So if I know that I'm going to go somewhere for a day, I know I'm going to drink water at some point or at different points. I know that I'm going to eat some food, most likely. Perhaps I'm going to buy some food. So if I'm going to go out, plan ahead, taking my reusable water bottle, making my food, taking it with me, or if not, taking a container so I can use it, taking a reusable bag, planning ahead, being minimalist. This is huge for me as well as slow living. This helps not consuming so much, that waste hierarchy, refusing, saying no, reducing what I don't need. I don't know if you can see it well right now, but I have half of my belongings are these books. For me, I care about them. I already had them. I keep them. I try, except food, to be really, really taking my time to see if I'm going to buy something. So voting with your dollar. If you're going to buy something, choosing well who are you giving that dollar to. That's a vote. Just like what we do when we choose politicians, when we spend our money, we're doing that. So if you know your values, you can find businesses that align to your values. And again, sometimes it doesn't happen or with what's convenient. Important to understand what we're buying. Most of my clothes as well, I've been using them for 15 years, most of it, almost 20 years, some of them. I do have a couple of new-ish things, most of them are second-hand. So understanding as well how we can go and spend our time. So a few tricks and tips that I have once we're able to leave our homes and our bubbles. Carrying a zero waste kit all of the time. So I carry my reusable bag with my water bottle. For the people that drink coffee or tea or any other drink, take a reusable coffee cup. Some container, I have one of those that you can compact them so that then they don't take so much space, and then you can allow them to become bigger so there's more space. Having your own cutlery all of the time. I take my own cutlery all of the time. I have some paper bags that I have gotten from the past. I take those there. So I know 95% of whatever I would buy, I can use something of that. If you're able to buy food from your farmer's market, buying locally helps a lot, but as well understanding who you're buying from. So I choose to eat organic, and I know that it can be more expensive, so again, seeing what's convenient. I choose to buy from the farms that use regenerative practices. They are not only not doing things worse in terms of our soil and in terms of the pesticides and a lot of the chemicals that are used in industrialized ways, but also they are regenerating. So buying from your farmers market or from your farmers directly instead of the supermarket, huge. If you have a refillery near you, buy from there, buy bulk. That makes things less waste. As I mentioned before, take your own cup, take your own container. Knowing that this is a journey, there are so many topics that are really important that we can go into. One is understanding circular economy. We have a system that is mostly linear, a system that it's about taking and then creating waste, creating rubbish. When we change our understanding of our interaction with the earth, we no longer take resources. We allow ourselves to engage with what our Mother Earth gives us. We use that and then we return it as compost, or with another way, we allow the transformation to keep on happening. In nature, there is no waste, everything is circular. Understanding how we can move into spaces like that by choosing those type of practices. As I mentioned before, the importance of eating organic food, of choosing practices that are regenerative, that are not wasting our soil, that are not creating the conditions for what we put into our bodies to be full of chemicals. Understanding the practices that organizations and companies have in terms of their ethics. Are they paying well to their employees? Are they paying a living wage? Do they have any labor that is slave or modern slavery, child labor? This nowadays is easier to access to that. We can ask questions to companies. For the ones that I'm not sure, because either I haven't engaged with them in the past, or I haven't found someone else that has made that research, or these companies don't have any certifications and some of the certifications are really good. I ask questions. Most times, if people are doing the right thing, they will answer. The next topic, sometimes it's a little bit charged for people, but veganism. For me, I'm vegan. I choose to see life with compassion and respect towards all living beings, including animals. So I choose that perspective. And I know that because of that perspective, my diet, which is a plant-based diet, which is not the same as veganism, my plant-based diet is one that has a huge amount of reduction of the impact as some of the other diets have, because of animal agriculture and the way that it's done around the world and the impact that it has. So that by reducing our food consumption of animal products, or completely cutting them from our diets and from our consumption in general, we can reduce a lot of the impact as well. We need to understand how we are creating our emissions as individuals. There's ways that we can track that. There's apps that we can use for tracking that. As well, how are we using our energy? Where are we getting it from? There's companies that use more renewable energy, or renewable principles than others, making our information, our knowledge base wider so we can notice that. And what's our place within our communities? And I will come in a moment to this topic. Because you are not alone. There's millions of us that are doing something because we care. And as mentioned before, everybody cares, but some of us care enough at this moment to be moved into action. So knowing that you're not alone, knowing that this, even though there's things that we can do as individuals, it's really important to understand that we are not isolated. The impact that we have it in the collective. We have it in relationship. We have it when we understand that we're all trying to do what's best. When we find those which align to our values, to our worldviews, make things easier. When we find the people that are doing things in different areas, how can we complement each other? How can we cooperate? How can we enhance what we are doing? Because we need to understand how we have been conditioned to believe that as well we need to do everything by ourselves. Not true. We do this in relationship. The power is in the collective, in your community, whether that is your house, your neighborhood, your local community, or bigger and bigger communities. When we understand the role of our communities, we can share more. We can share resources, we can share information, we can share spaces, we can allow for much more than if we try to do everything by ourselves and we believe that we are competing with others. Competition brought us to this place. We need to shift our way of thinking to do things differently. We need to allow ourselves to come out of that behavior. And when we allow ourselves to understand as well the role of our elders and not just disregarding the older people, there's a lot of amazing wisdom on elders. It's not that far in time where a lot of the things that we're doing now that it's creating a lot of the waste and the rubbish that we have and the pollution, they didn't exist when some of our grandparents were alive. When we were reducing a lot of things, when life was much slower pace, and as well allowing ourselves to connect with the younger generations, the kids now. Not only they know what's happening, most of them, they are being moved to act. We can see that all of the time in all of the climate strikes. They are walking, they are acting, and they need as well support. We need to understand how intergenerationally we need to connect. We need to engage with others, to share. We need to listen as well. We need to be able to see the different perspectives because different people are bringing different perspectives in this land. What's the perspective from Maori worldview? I love a lot of the perspectives and how the connection to ourselves, our well-being is much more expanded. The physical, the mental, the spiritual, the whānau, our family, our expanded relatives, how we treat our Mother Earth. we need to be able to engage with all of this. And before we get into more of a conversation and sharing and asking questions, it's really important to know that you can make the jump to dive deep into all of this, or you can just start with one small conscious action. Really important, just one action, different, conscious, can make a huge difference. So thank you for listening to me sharing. Now I'm going to stop sharing my screen. And if there's anything that you would like to ask or share, please feel free to do so.
Brian,
Yes.
thank you so very much for your presentation tonight. I'm very glad I found out about your prezzo tonight and signed up at the very last minute. In fact, it's yesterday. I think it's interesting that at the very start, you had, I suppose, warned your audience that not everything you are sharing tonight will resonate with them. But I think, interestingly, a lot of the things you have actually said do resonate with me. In particular, you need to start with the why. Why do you care? You know, for someone who's nearing 50 and all of a sudden I care, but why do I care? And for me, my reason is my nieces. I don't have any children, but I have two young nieces, and I have actually started thinking about their future and the future of their kids and kids and what so. And you start asking the question, what sort of world are you going to be leaving, you know, kids like them and their kids? So all of a sudden it's starting to matter. And I presumably perhaps am becoming a bit of a tree hugger in my older years, I suppose. But yes, it does. And I think it's really important that you pointed out that, and that's one of the things I said to you at the start, that we have to start small and we make changes where we can, and even small changes will matter. I will probably never become a vegan because I do enjoy protein. I'm sorry if it's offensive to vegans that I do eat animals, but I absolutely love my steak. But I am starting to look for other ways where I can, and I really like your 3 R's, your refuse, reduce, and reuse. And while you were talking about that, it really made me think about how I can, there's a refillery not far from me, how I can actually start using the refillery a lot more and making choices. And, you know, when you have competing values, that's a very interesting thing because that happens all the time when you're shopping.
Yeah.
So I think it's actually a really fantastic session, and I like the pace that you took it at. It's really good. It's slow. It really allows you to listen, and it reminded me that you need to be a good listener. So thanks very much. And yes, and minimalist living, and I think that's something that the world potentially probably needs to be reminded of sometimes. We just acquire too much and accumulate too much. And in the end, a lot of that goes into landfill.
Yeah. There's, thank you for sharing, because I think that there's a lot of the things that you mentioned that I think that they are completely valid, especially based on everything that I have been talking about. Like the first thing is, for me, I'm talking about myself. I cannot talk about anybody else. What you were mentioning about veganism, for example, I don't get offended because everybody's free to do their own choices. People have their own perspectives, and we make decisions. For me, as long as the decisions are consciously made, everybody's free to do whatever they want. When we understand things, then we can make informed decisions. The more that we learn, the easier it is to make informed decisions. And as I said before, we have different values and we need to put them, measure them and balance them and seeing, okay, what's possible and what's not. For me, one of the really important things in terms of this space, and I think that a lot of times the talks on this space can be really negative, pointing out all of the negative sort of things that, like the doom and gloom. I didn't focus on that because I already know what's happening. I want to create in my mind and putting out there for the collective a vision of what's possible, a more conscious way of living. That is one where we are living in relationship with nature, in communion with each other. And when we can allow ourselves to see the potential for that world that is thriving, then we can point towards there. And the road there, it's going to be different for each of us. And when we acknowledge that, someone, this is why at the beginning I was mentioning the why. Why do you care? And the values. Someone might be, like reducing completely, as I have here, like this is like rubbish. Like someone might choose to reduce all of their plastic consumption and not buying anything that is rubbish. Other people might choose to do something in terms of their diet, whether that is vegan or not. Some other people might choose to do something about where they put their money, if that's what they have. Like one of the simple things here in New Zealand that everybody can do is move their KiwiSaver to an ethical one. Like for me, Pathfinder is a wonderful one. What, as I was saying before, voting with your dollar is something that we can all do if we have KiwiSaver, for example, or if we invest money, putting that there. Someone might decide not to travel internationally or not to use airplanes or not to have a car and reduce their footprint in that sense. We can all choose what we're going to focus on. Nobody's going to be perfect. As I said at the beginning, we all will have a footprint. So how do we choose that? It's really important. And the other thing that I think it's worth mentioning as well is the more that we remind ourselves as well of how we can live life and making it nourishing and happy without much stuff. We don't always need stuff. So reducing what we are consuming is really important because that enables us to engage in a way that we can enjoy more of life. We can create more space to enjoy what we already have, to enjoy the people around us, to enjoy the environment around us. We don't usually do that a lot. This is why for me, and I come, from a background of well-being and spirituality, I choose to bring my mindset and my perspectives into it a lot because that enables me to live in that way. So it's really important to keep our minds, like open and to see different perspectives, to see how different people live and to understand that we all come to this moment with a different background. So we need to acknowledge everything that we're bringing to the space and to be able to, as I said before, being kind, being compassionate to ourselves and to others. That's the way forward.
Thanks, Brian. And I think that you've summed it up really, really well in the sense that we can all each do something, make a small change, and collectively those small changes will hopefully result in a collective movement towards the right direction.
Mm. Yes, definitely.
So yeah, thanks very much for your talk tonight.
Thank you. Thank you for being here. Thank you for listening. As always, you can find me later online on Conscious Action. So, if anything, any questions or anything that you'd like to share, please feel free to do that. And if there's anything else to move forward in connection, then happy to do that. It's a really important space to be able to engage with others and to listen and to, as you were just saying, and I had it on the presentation, we are not alone. We need to connect again. So thank you.
Thank you, Brian. I look forward to receiving the recorded
Wonderful.
version of your presentation.
Thank you and have a wonderful evening.
Thanks, Brian. You too.
Bye.
Bye-bye.